Okay, Be'ezrat Hashem, we continue with Pasuk Kafchet. Perek Yud, Pasuk Kafchet. Wow. תוחלת צדיקים, שמחה. The expectation, the yes, of the tzaddik, what he attends, what he looks forward to, yes, is simcha. V'tikvat reshaim toved, and the hope of the reshaim toved is will be erased, will be lost. So we're going to learn the Gaon, and then I'll tell you how amazing, again, how Kadosh Baruch Hu is just amazing every single time. Okay. Tohelet tzadikim simcha. So the Gaon addresses the difference between tohelet and tikva. Tohelet is when a person expects something in a far future. Tikva is in the short future. So he says like this: the tzaddikim do not have a short-term outlook on life. The tzaddik is not focused on what he gains right away. They always look for the long term. What is the difference between the short term and the long term? Short term is immediate pleasure and benefits. Long term is olam haba. We need to understand better what the Gaon is saying. The Gaon is not talking right now about the difference of only of length of time, but he's really focusing on what? On what is important and what isn't. What is essential and what isn't. That's the difference between the tzaddik and the rasha. The tzaddik understands that you have short-term benefits, but any short-term benefit, by definition, is limited. And is purpose-fueled. Long-term benefits are the benefits you get that are limitless and are beyond concept of purpose. That's the sachar le'olam haba, right? In olam haba, because there is no definition of time, the dimension of time, so there is no also dimension of purpose, because a purpose is defined by the concept of time. There's no time, there's no purpose. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, he created the world with limits, and the limitations gave birth to the concept of purpose, because the purpose is an outcome. So it's something that comes at the end. That's the purpose. Yes? So anything that is limited has a purpose. The outcome, right, the benefits, le'olam haba, is to what? Well, yes, the the work, I'm working towards a purpose, which is Olam Haba. But the benefit of Olam Haba that I get in Olam Haba is what? Tzadikim yoshvim ve'aterotehem al Hashem ve'ne'enim miziv hashchina. Is to sit with a crown on the head, which is the Torah, and enjoy from the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yes. That's all it is. There's no outcome from that. That is the outcome. So the actual benefit in Olam Haba is not limited, and by default is that doesn't yield an expectation of an outcome. The status is the outcome, and that outcome is what you work towards in this world, but not in the world to come. So the tzaddik values the benefits le'atid lavo versus a pleasure of the moment, of a satisfaction of the moment. And how is that benefit defined by Shlomo HaMelech? How does Shlomo HaMelech determines, yes, the tochelet, what the tzaddik looks forward to as simcha? Happiness. So the definition of happiness, according to Shlomo HaMelech, is yielding an infinite outcome that basically you can benefit from. That is the definition of simcha according to Shlomo HaMelech, based on the Gaon.
Again,
is to yield an outcome that is infinite. Yes, that is the definition of simcha. When you create something that is not limited, that is simcha. Anything by default that is limited is not simcha.
And what's the name of that?
Pleasure, satisfaction. But the definition of simcha is when you create something that can last forever.
So it's only by spiritual ways.
Correct.
Only way to get simcha.
Nachon. That's the definition.
Nice.
Or zarua latzadik uleish chelev simcha. En simcha kesimchat haTorah. Ezeu ashir asameach bechelko. Right? When a person is sameach with what he has, so he's no longer chasing. So now he is a vessel to work for Kudsha Brichu. He can be now focused on the Avodat Hashem. So, Ezeu Ashir Asameach Becheko, when you're Sameach in your Chelek and you're not chasing, then you're Ashir. Why are you Ashir? Because now you can benefit from the Birkat Hashem. Ki Birkat Hashem ita Ashir. So, chasing is focusing on the benefits that are short terms. So it's basically being focused on the world of limitations that will yield satisfaction, happy moments, joyful moments, absolutely. But it's not the definition of simcha. When you're involved in doing something that can translate a limited effort into a limitless benefit, then this is simcha. Then the pleasure that you have at that moment is a version of the simha you're about to get in the future.
Rabbi, can you give practical examples? If we're talking about spirituality, what is short term in terms of spirituality? What could be potentially short term and not and limited?
In spirituality?
Yeah, the pasuk is talking about specifically spirituality, nothing material.
Correct.
What in spirituality
Ah,
can fall in the bucket of short term is my question.
Yeah.
In my mind, anything spiritual is for
אל תהיו כעבדים, העובדים על מנת לקבל פרס. If you put tefillin because you believe that if you put tefillin, Hashem will bless you with something in this world. You give tzedakah because you want a deal to get by. You decide to do chesed because you're expecting something else. So what are you doing? You're transferring the outcome, which is infinite in Olam Haba, and you want to cash it in Olam Hazeh. So you might cash in some benefit, but the sachar, the real benefit of a mitzvah, is not in this world. That doesn't mean you don't benefit from the reward. What it means is that you cannot consolidate something that's infinite into something that's finite. You cannot turn a benefit that's le'olam va'ed and turn it into a pleasure of a moment here, even if that pleasure is whatever you want. So when you're in a transactional dynamic with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in your mitzvot, you might benefit from those mitzvot, but the real sachar you're not getting. However, when you understand, right, it's like an investment. You buy a property, you can flip it and make profit, or decide to develop it. Why? Because I want to create generational wealth. I want to be able to leave my grandchildren a portfolio of real estate that will bring in, steady income. It's different strategies, right? But in the long term, the what you leave for the generations is much greater than what you can make in a flip. Most of the time, yeah. Sometimes we understand each other, yeah. So the same thing. Do I want to make a flip and trade right now the benefit of a mitzvah in Olam Haba for something in Olam Hazeh? Yeah, and that would mean an effort that is for spirituality but is limited versus what it should be and what it is to the tzaddikim. The vision of what you the real benefit. Now you're going to ask me maybe a question. So how can you be motivated to look at the infinite outcome versus the finite outcome? People can say, listen, let me benefit when I can here. We'll deal with later with the Olam Haba later. At least I know for sure that right now I'm benefiting. So why do I need to wait for after? Bezrat Hashem after also, but let me just cash in. So how can you upgrade your outlook on life in order to mature your thought process and focus on the future versus the immediate benefits? This is where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is amazing, because this is a hidush I had when I just arrived in Argentina. I told Andy, the Malbim explains on the pasuk, Hashem wants the one that fears him, the one that crave for his chesed. So he says, what? It says it should be kol hamekavim lechazdo, that are hoping for his chesed. What does it mean, amiyah halim? That's the word tochelet of here. So the Malbim says the difference there is between tikva, hope, and tochelet, amiyah halim, to expect, is that hope, you don't have clarity. You don't believe it's coming for sure. Maybe it comes, maybe it doesn't. Amiyah halim is when you know for sure it's coming. When you know for sure that everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is chesed, and you know for sure that the outcome is chesed, or the olam haba is emet, then you expect. Who does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want? Et amiyah halim lechazdo. The one that expect is chesed, that know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all he does is chesed. So that's the Malbim there. So comes Shlomo HaMelech says, Tochelet Tzadikim, the one that know for sure that they expect, right, the reward in Olam Haba, they expect their Olam Haba simcha. So they're happy. They invest in happiness. The Tikvad Reshaim, but the Reshaim, they don't have clarity. Tikva, they hope. So for them, they even the tikva that they have, even what they hope to get in the immediate future, that also is going to be lost. Is going to disappear. Meaning, again, depending on how much emunah and how much clarity you have in Hashem's solvability, right? To pay your efforts in Olam Haba, that will determine how much visibility you have in focusing on an outcome that is infinite and focus on the Olam Haba versus focusing on the immediate benefit in Olam Hazeh. If you don't have that clarity and you're just hopeful, then the fact that you are hopeful will force you to focus in Olam Hazeh. Why? Because I hope that in Atid Avo, I hope that eventually we will have Olam Haba. But here I know for sure I'm getting rewarded for my pleasures. So let me cash in on my pleasures and hope for the future. So Shlomo HaMelech comes, says the Gaon, to reveal to us the importance of trusting and believing in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's reward. Bevadai, for sure, without any doubt. This is why Chachamim tell us that we have an obligation to believe that Mashiach will come. We have an obligation to believe in Tchiyat HaMetim. Right? That's part of the Yud Gimel mitzvot. There's 13 beliefs that a person must remind himself every day. It's a mitzvah aseh. Kadosh Baruch Hu masur magiach, echad, ואין לו גוף, ואין לו דמות הגוש, קדמון לכל קדומין, אין עבודה לזולתו, יודע מחשבות בני אדם, כן? ושתיים, שכר טוב לצדיקים, תחיית המתים. So we have an obligation to believe, to work on our belief that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at the end of time, will pay us. That when we go to Olam Haba, there is a world, there is accountability. This is the framework that a person must have the moment he opens his eyes. I'm going to live today, Be'ezrat Hashem. I'm going to have to make decisions. I will make decisions based on what? Based on me today, or based on Olam Haba. If I trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I believe in His Torah, then I cannot trade Olam Haba for Olam Hazeh. So what am I going to do? I'm going to enhance my effort in Olam Hazeh in order to build the Olam Haba. That's the outlook of the tzaddikim. But the Reshaim, because they don't have clarity and they don't have emunah and bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that He will pay at the end of time, and there is accountability at the end of the days. So, en safek mosimi devadai. When you have a doubt, and on one end, and you have for sure on the other, you pick what's for sure. So what's for sure is Olam Hazeh. Let me enjoy this world, and what I don't know. We'll deal with it. That is the difference in outlook between the Rasha and the Tzaddik. Clear? Kaftet. Ma'oz latom derech Hashem. The strength of the tamim, of the simple, is derech Hashem, is the path of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way of Hashem. Umechita lepo'ale aven, and it is the derech Hashem, is the runes, is the destruction to the ones that do evil. Says the Gaon, the path, the way to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the derech Hashem, to have clarity and knowledge and understanding of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be in a lifestyle, when you behave serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, knowing that you're at the service of Hashem, in itself is the strength, right? Is the power of the Tmimim, of the people that go with HaKadosh Baruch Hu with Temimut. However, to the ones, the Poale Avens, the ones that do bad, evil, the Derech Hashem is a destruction to them. It's ruining their satisfaction. It's ruining their life. Po'ale Aven, the ones that do evil, says the Gaon, starts not at the level of the action, but at the level of the mahshava, of the thought. The Gaon addresses here this pasuk at the level of the inception of the thought. He says like this: the poel even, the one that's going to end up do evil, is the one that when he thinks, he looks at the Avodat Hashem as runes to him, as a reason to destroy his ways. So if you see, basically, if you look at the Avodat Hashem as a burden and as a limitation, as a source of frustration, of obligations, that outlook leads to Po'ale Aven, leads to actions of evil. But those that look at the Derech Hashem as the path of life, that outlook becomes their own strength to face life and engage with life from a position of strength and control. So says the Gaon, Shlomo HaMelech here is addressing the outlook we have in life. Do we address Torah and Yirat Shamayim as a burden? And by default, because of that, we set ourselves up for errors and negative actions and evil actions? Or do we look at life from a tmimut way, from a pure way, from a simple way, and therefore we approach the Derech Hashem as of where Avodat Hashem, of life, and therefore that outlook becomes a source of strength that carries us throughout our day and every situation. Yes.
Can you, sir, just explain that those who see Hashem as their life and a bracha in their life, how do they? What's the flip side of the Rasha in that?
The Rasha is the one that sees the Avodat Hashem as a burden, as like a punishment. You understand? So if you look at it as a burden, as something heavy, so that machshava sets the person to puts the person on a path where he ends up poel aven, having an evil behavior.
Right, and on the flip side?
On the flip side, if you are tamim, if you have tmimut, and you're shalem with avodat Hashem, you're on the path of derech Hashem, right? With an outlook of tmimut, of simplicity, of humility, and you're complete with it. You understand it. So the derech Hashem becomes your strength. when you behave the way Hashem expects you to behave, then you have trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You have clarity in what your obligation is, in what your responsibility is. So you engage life with strength because you know HaKadosh Baruch Hu has your back, and you know that everything that every outcome is the chesed of Hashem. But when you doubt that, and when you see Avodat Hashem as a burden, restrictions, interference in your life, then this naturally will push you away from it because you'll resent the Avodat Hashem. So even if you do it 1 time, 2 times, at one point you're going to burst and you're going to reject it all, like the Ochot Tzadikim say in his Akdama. And that leads to what? To a rebellious behavior that makes a person start doing evil actions. So says the Shlomo HaMelech, the evil behavior is the end result of what? Of the wrong outlook on Derech Hashem. So essentially, if we apply this in Chinuch, if you teach the way of Hashem to anyone, to your children, if we teach our children the way of Hashem as being something that is pure, something that is good, something that brings shlemut, and it's embraced with love, so the path itself is their strength. That's what will give them the strength to fight the Yetzer Hara or any situation they face. And how do you teach that? By your own behavior. If our children see us schlep, we have to pray mincha, we have to do that, we have to stop to go and do, right? Then they read within our behavior that it's a burden that we have to carry. Yeah. And that we're not happy to carry. But if they see that it's a source of strength, it's a source of motivation, and we're happy to do mitzvot, and we're excited to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they catch our engagement, they catch our outlook, and they get inspired by it. Meaning you cannot go and deal with the outcome as being the beginning and the end of the problem. The behavior is the end result of a thought process that started the wrong way. And where does it start? It says the Gaon here in this pasuk. It starts from the outlook on the Torah and Avodat Hashem. Yes? Yeah. And I think Kafchet and Kaftet are complementary, yes? Because the more you have clarity in Hashem's rewards, yes? And in the Olam Haba, and the more you're Tamim and Shalem in your Avodat Hashem. And the more you behave with strength and security, and the more it's picked up by your surrounding. And the flip side, the other way around. The less you believe and you trust, and you have clarity, and the more doubtful you are, and the more it becomes a burden, because you're doubting that maybe you're wasting your time. Who knows? Right? So now the whole Avodat Hashem becomes a burden. It becomes a burden. It will drive the person to start rejecting and rebelling. And even if you don't do it practically in the eyes of everybody, but it's picked on by the people around you. So yes, the way you walk to shul, and the way you make a beracha, and the way you enter your Shabbat, and the way you prepare yourself for Pesach, and the way you prepare your Sukkah will determine how your children will look at the Avodat Hashem.
Well, I woke up my son this morning for school. I said, it's late, you have to get up. He says, I'll make you a deal, Pop. I'll get up early for school if you get up early for shul on Shabbat.
Exactly.
He's 9.
That's exactly the point. How can you expect your kids? How can we expect our kids, right, to enjoy tefillah if we arrive late and we don't pray seriously? You can't tell them why are you late to shul if you don't take shul seriously. So Shlomo Melech is going deep in the thought process to explain to us where things start. And that has another impact in life. That's Pasuk Lamed. Tzaddik le'olam balimot. The tzaddik will never be shaken up, will never collapse. U'reshaim lo yishkenu aretz. And the reshaim will not reside, will not stay on earth. Says the Malbi, the Gaon. He says, based on that outlook, the tzaddik, afal pi shelifamim tzaddik met lifnei rasha. You may see that the tzaddik dies before the rasha. But that's lefi sha'ah. That's only a moment in time. Because the tzaddik doesn't see this life as something infinite. He understands that it's a step in the bigger picture. It's a moment in the time, right? So it's fine. The tzaddik doesn't see the failure, doesn't see the fall down as something bad. Sheva ipol tzaddik vakam, because the tzaddik falls and he stands up again. You might see that tzaddik falling now, but it's in a moment he will stand again. And that moment will be at Chiyat HaMetim, or in Olam Haba. He fell here, but he stood up there. So he doesn't see the failure of the righteous as a determined failure, weakness, because he will stand again. So when a challenge comes, when the setback comes, it's a setback, but for a kima, for standing up again stronger. I'm going to tell you what Andy wrote to me this morning. So apropos. Mamash almost Ruach HaKodesh. In order to build a building as high as you can, first you have to go deep down. That's what he wrote to me this morning. He was giving me hizuk, meaning that when there is the moment of where you feel you're going down, if you look at going down as going down, then you'll go deep, and that's it. But if you understand that you're only going down because you're building a high rise tower, then you understand that it's a moment in the process. That's what Shlomo HaMelech is telling us. Tzaddik le'olam balimot. The tzaddik never ends up being shamed, never ends up falling. I love the heart then. Never ends up falling. Yes, it's the failure is a moment in the growth process. That's the outlook of the tzaddik. Because why? Because the tzaddik, pasuk kafchet and kaftet, trusts in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's chesed, understanding it's all about the future, it's all about the limitless simcha. He understands that when you're on the way of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is your strength. So he finds, even in moment of distress, the strength to stand up again and continue. That's the outlook of the tzaddik. The reshaim, however, the reshaim lo yishkenu aretz. Says the Gaon, the moment they're being shooken, the moment the falling starts, they will not stop falling, and they can never stand up again. And says the Gaon, and even if you see them standing today, it's a question of time before they fall. They end up falling. So do not let the standing of the Rishaim shake you up and question your emunah, that maybe that's the right way. Oh, look at these guys. They don't do nothing, but they have everything. Everything goes well for them. Emet. But for how long? That's the difference between the tzaddik and the rasha. And how do you see this in the tzaddik? How does that translate in the behavior of the tzaddik versus the rasha? That's pasuk lamed aleph. Pi tzaddik yanuv chokhmah. The mouth of the tzaddik, right, produces wisdom. Ulshon tapuchot tikaret. And the lashon, the tongue, that tapuchot, that says, opposite things, right, that tricks you, will be cut off. The tzaddik, says Shlomo HaMelech, because he is focused on Olam Haba, he's focused on the Derech Hashem, he has clarity, he always is in a behavior and dynamic of standing up. He constantly produces Hidushim. He constantly produces Chokhmah. He constantly sharing growth. The Eno Posek Le'olam, he never stops from more Hidushim, from more Torah, from more growth. And the dynamic is because he's producing so much, he's attracting the crowd. And the crowd now inspires him and forces him to produce even more. So it's like a snowball effect. It's a power, a growth of power, more and more and more and more and more and more and more. But the trickery tongue, the tongue that tricks you, is somebody that always says something and it's contrary. Somebody that his speech is not guided by the value of emet. He speaks as it comes. So one day he's going to say this, one day he's going to say that. by default at the end, that tongue will be cut, meaning it will have no ear to listen that wants to listen to this tongue. Again, the contrast between the tzaddik and the rasha. The tzaddik, by default, what does he have? What's his motivation? Is the emet, right? That the olam emet, Torat emet, darkei Hashem shehi emet. So the motivation and the compass of the tzaddik, it's all about emet. So the emet gives him clarity, the perspective, gives him strength, and yields chokhmah, that is Torah emet, that creates an environment that triggers more of that chokhmah. So it's like an engine, right? That builds more and more and more emet. But the rasha that lives in the doubt, right? That lives in confusion. His speech also, if it's not emet, is confusing. You can see that you cannot rely on what he says. So what happens? He ends up being secluded and alienated. Nobody wants to be close. Nobody wants to listen. So his tongue at the end is like a cut tongue. Because the only person he will speak to is himself. Nobody will want to listen. And finally, I want to begin. We're going to try to finish Pasuk Lamed Bet because that's connected. If you pay attention, the tzaddik starts from his emunah and his outlook, and slowly translate into his behavior, and his behavior into his speech. His speech, the impact he has on his surrounding. Lamed Bet Siftei Tzaddikim. The lips of the tzaddik, the lips of the tzaddik, yed'un ratzon, they know how to bring favor. Ufir rashaim tahpuchot, but the mouth of the reshaim, again, is all trickery. Says the Gaon, the tzaddik Chazal tell us that there is no tzaddik that stands on this world, on this earth, and doesn't sin. People make mistakes. How does the tzaddik addresses the mistake? That's part of the avodah. The tzaddik, because the emet is important, and because he has bitachon, the moment he sees that there is a sin, that he wronged someone, he will know exactly how to address the issue. He will find the anava to say, I'm sorry, explain in a way the person will understand him what happened in order to open his heart and find favor and solve the issue. Yeshur al anashim beyom hatati. That's pasuk in Yov. You have to be able to be straight with the people and say hatati, I sinned. How? Chachamim say, he brings 3 people, right? And he tells the person in front, 3 edim, mehila, I sinned, and I mean it. The tzaddik, when he makes a mistake, the mistake consumes him so much, he has so much pain, says the Gaon, that when he comes and he asks for mehila, that emet, that feeling cannot stay unfelt, unaddressed by the person that was hurt. Because you see how genuine he is. Because of his emet, because he doesn't want to carry the sin, because he doesn't want to leave this issue open. And that enters the heart of the person, and the person is mohen. So the tzaddik knows, the lips of the tzaddik know how to find favor. Because he's a tzaddik, because of his emet, because of his outlook, because of his bitachon. But the Rasha, because he's always living doubts, he's always confused, his behavior is not right, his speech is never guided by the emet. Doesn't matter if he comes and he says, I'm sorry, the person knows that it's all sheker. He knows that there's no meaning, real meaning to those words. Echad bapeh ve'echad balev. He says something, but he means something else. So the sheker cannot penetrate the heart. It doesn't matter if he cries crocodile tears, like they say, yeah? It's all a show. It's all a game. It's all manipulative. So, divrei emet nikarim, right? Things, words of emet are clear and identifiable by all. But the same is with sheker. So the Rasha cannot find favor in the hearts of people. He can manipulate, but he cannot find favor the be'emet. He cannot really ask for forgiveness. This is the power of the tzaddik, says Shlomo HaMelech. And it starts with what? With your emunah and bitachon that HaKadosh Baruch Hu emet, and that there is olam emet, and there is Torato emet. And that has already, right? That sets the tone in the approach of Avodat Hashem, the engagement in Avodat Hashem, the ability to rise and have the proper outlook on challenges in life. To be always positive and grow, and to know how to fix mistakes and actually fix them, not pretend to fix them. This is how Shlomo HaMelech concludes the Lev Pesukim, the 32 Pesukim of Perek Yud, B'Sha'ah Tova. B'Siyata Dishmaya, we concluded the first Perek of the second book of Mishlei. Any questions? No, Baruch Hashem, okay.
No.